Hi there, it's Lee here. Welcome to iMineBlocks. In this video, I'll be sharing with you a complete parts and costing breakdown to build your very own 100TB Burstcoin miner. So I decided to put this video together because after the success of my 100TB Burstcoin earnings, lots of people were messaging me asking for specification details to build their very own miners. So people were asking, what's the best motherboard, what's the CPU, should I buy Seagate drives or should I buy Lacie drives, etc. So I decided to put this video together to show the components that I would use if I was to build a brand new 100TB plus Burstcoin miner from scratch. So this is what I've come up with, and what I'll be doing is I'll be showing you each of the components that I'm going to be using within the system, and I'm also going to be explaining why I chose these components, what the main benefits and features are. And then you can use this list to either create your own version exactly the same as I have, or you can modify it to best suit your needs. So I'm going to continue on. We'll go through each of the components part by part. Like I said, I'll do a breakdown for each of the sections and also the costings to give you an idea of the overall cost of the actual rig itself. So let's continue on. Okay, so with Burstcoin mining, or in fact any other type of hard drive mining, you want the majority of your capital going into your hard drives themselves. So you kind of really want to try and reduce your costs on all the other parts of the actual system, and you kind of want as much money as possible of your capital allowance going into your hard drives. That's where you're going to get the best returns back. So I've got a couple of different options for you. My personal preference would be to choose these Seagate drives. The reason why I've chose these in this instance, I've used lots of other drives previously, but I've just started using some of these Seagate Backup Plus drives, and they are very, very good value. So the drives themselves are not the best in terms of speed and performance, or even design functionality. I would say they're just kind of fair, not bad drives, but they're not certainly the best either. But what they do offer is tremendous value for money. So you're getting a huge amount of capacity. These are 8TB drives. Like I said, they're not the fastest, but you are getting great value for money. So these would be my primary choice for building a big, fair size, 100TB plus Burstcoin miner. Now with these drives, these are 8TB, they're USB 3 drives, so they're external drives. The reason I've chosen them is because they give you, the best value for money. They're 5400 RPM, which is, not the fastest, but it's good enough. The actual price that you're paying per terabyte, like I say, is incredibly good value. So it works out to $30.81 per terabyte, which is good value. And when I shopped around, I found them for $246.50 each. For your Burstcoin rig, if you're building over 100 terabytes, you would need to use 13 drives for a total of $3,204.50. And that would give you 104 terabytes of raw capacity. So you're going to need 13 8TB drives. So these are the drives that I would pick. Like I say, they give you the best ratio of capacity for the actual money that you're spending. There is a secondary option, and I'll go into this now, using Lacie drives, which might be an option for some people. Okay, so an option for some people, if you have the extra budget, and this is something that is really down to personal preference, one of the drives that you could choose instead of the Seagates is the Lacie Porsche design. The actual specific model number is P9233. These drives are 7200 RPM. It took quite a while to dig out that information, but these drives are much faster than the actual Seagate drives. The actual design and quality is better. They've got like a really nice aluminium case. They look the part, but they're also really fast. I wouldn't necessarily recommend these drives. They are very good, but you are going to pay a slight premium for the extra quality and speed, and that's really something down to your own personal preference. The drives are good, but I don't think they're justified. It's not really justified to pay the extra for them. On a comparative basis, you're going to be paying roughly around about $6 over for each of the drives, and when you combine that over the 13 drives, you're looking at $600 extra in payment. So that's going to take you a bit of extra work to get that money back, to get your capital back on the spending of these drives. So if you are looking for the best possible quality and performance, choose the Lacie drives. If you're just focusing on the return that you want back from your miner, then I would go for the Seagate drives. So let's continue on. We'll talk about some of the other components that are going to be required for this mining machine. Okay, so for the Burstcoin miner, you're going to need to build up what is essentially a regular PC. So I've chose this particular motherboard, which is a Asus A88X-Plus. It's an FM2 socket motherboard. So there's a couple of reasons why I chose this motherboard versus other variations of it. So I explain my reasoning for that to help you better understand why I chose this one. So first of all, it's a full-size ATX motherboard. What that means is you're going to get some extra PCI slots, which probably will be beneficial in the future, particularly if you're looking to upgrade your Burstcoin mining rig. So for example, you might use one of the actual slots for a graphics card, you might use another slot in the future for a USB expansion card. So if you chose a micro ATX version of this board, you're going to get less upgradability options in the future. They also have fewer USB 3 ports and also fewer DDR RAM slots as well. So I chose a full-size ATX board. One other reason I chose this board as well, which is actually kind of like a previous generation board, it's not the newest board, is because you're getting good value for money. It also supports DDR3. Now obviously we've moved on to DDR4 boards at this moment in time, but you're going to get better value when you come to purchasing your memory, so that's why I chose a DDR3 board. This board also supports USB 3 and also 3.1, so you get a wide variety of ports. You also get several ports to use, so when you're plugging in your USB 3 hubs, you've got plenty of ports to choose from, and it will also break up the actual load on the USB bus. The value is good, it's $102, which I think is a fair price for this board. Like I say, if you're looking for other options, you can choose a similar Intel board, but I would go for like the previous generation. That's where you're going to get the best value and the best features that you will need. So let's move on to the CPU and RAM requirements. Okay, so the CPU that I've decided to go with for this Burstcoin miner is a AMD A8-7600. It's a 3.1 GHz FM2 processor. So there's lots to choose from this range of processors. I chose this one. It's kind of like the middle of the road processor for this particular socket. It's got a quad-core processor, good speed, but one of the other key features that this processor actually supports is the fact that it has a integrated CPU and GPU. So that presents you with a couple of advantages. So what it means is that you can use your CPU for your regular sort of tasks, but the fact that it has a built-in GPU, you can even use that for mining or plotting. It opens up several other options for you. So for example, if you wanted to keep on a budget, you could just use this CPU on its own rather than buying a extra graphics card, which I'll come on to in the next few slides. So this is a really good all-round CPU. I've got a very similar CPU. I've actually got a A8-7700K in my Burstcoin miner, and that is also an excellent CPU also. So, but this is what I would go for this particular setup. Okay, so you're going to need a fair bit of RAM for your Burstcoin miner. I would recommend a minimum of 16 gigabytes of RAM. Ideally, if you've got a little bit of extra money, then 32 gigabytes would be perfect. But on this basis, we're going to go with 16 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM. So the details that I've got is that I'm just going to be using two 8 gigabyte sticks. The actual speed of the RAM, I think these ones were 1600 megahertz, but the actual frequency doesn't matter too much. Just buy whichever is the best value for money. So in this case, two 8 gig sticks come to a total of $105. So get yourself 16 gigs of RAM. Like I say, speed doesn't matter a great deal. Next up, we have the power supply for our miner. Now your miner isn't going to use a great deal of power, but I think it's always a good idea to choose a fairly good quality power supply, and also one that's also energy efficient, regardless of whether you're using 200 watts or 1000 watts. I think it's always a good idea to get a fairly good quality power supply. So the one that I've chosen is actually one that I've used before in one of my other rigs, and I'm quite I wouldn't say a fanboy of the brand, but I do like the actual quality and the price. I think they offer good value for money. So it's a Evga 650 GQ, and it's a gold rated power supply. So this power supply, it's semi-modular, and it has a good combination of connectors. So plenty of connectors if you add in graphics cards and things like that to increase the overall performance of your Burstcoin miner, or maybe you're going to be doing some dual mining on the side. This will be a really good power supply for you. It's got a 135mm fan. It's quiet, it runs quiet and cool, and it also has a 5-year warranty. So you're going to get your your money's worth on this power supply, and like I say, I have used them, and they're pretty good quality. The actual value for money is pretty good, and they're just going to cost you around about $78, depending on where you purchase from. So this is the power supply that I would go for this rig. It's a little bit overkill in terms of power, but I think it's a good all-rounder and a good power supply. Okay, so next up we have our graphics card for our Burstcoin miner. The one that I've chosen is a Asus EX RX570, and it's a 4GB version. So it's got twin fans, 8-pin PCI Express connector, and it's cost $240. So you might be wondering to yourself, why do I need a graphics card if I'm hard drive mining? Well, with Burstcoin, the actual hard drive mining is there's two important parts. And a graphics card can greatly help you with both aspects of it. So the first part is the plotting, and that's the part where the actual information gets written to your hard drives. If you can use your CPU, but it's faster and more productive if you use a dedicated graphics card. You can write your actual plots to your hard drives much faster. So that is part one. The second part is when you actually come to mining. You can use your CPU for reading all of your plots, and that will work perfectly adequately. But again, if you use an actual graphics card, you can speed up the reading time quite dramatically. I would say it's at least twice as fast when it comes to reading versus a CPU. So that's one of the reasons that you can use a graphics card. It is really kind of an optional item, but if you want to get the best performance and returns back from your mining machine, your mining rig, I would recommend using a graphics card. So this is one that I would choose, and that will help you with your mining efforts. Okay, so that's all the major components out of the way, but there is a few other smaller parts and accessories that will be useful for you. So here are the parts that I would recommend to go along and get the best out of your mining rig. So you're going to need somewhere for your operating system for the miner. So I've chosen a 60GB SSD. Really, the choice is completely up to you. Pick up whichever hard drive is cheapest for you. It can be a regular mechanical type hard drive, it can be an SSD. There's lots of different options for you. I just chose this one because it seemed to be fairly good value. You're also going to need a ATX case. Obviously we've chose a full-size motherboard, so make sure you choose a case that supports a full-size ATX motherboard. That's obviously going to house the main parts of your system, but it's up to you obviously exactly what case you want to choose. Lots to choose from, and they're super cheap, so pick whichever one is a good match for you. One other thing that you're going to require is a power towel. It's probably the best explanation for it. So it's kind of like an upright extension lead. Again, lots to choose from, but you want one that has the plugs that are kind of offset to each other. That will help you when it comes to plugging in your external hard drives. That will help you get the actual power adapters in each one of the sockets. On some multi-plug leads, they're arranged in such a way that you can't actually get all of your power adapters in. They kind of butt up too close. So I've used these ones, and these ones give you plenty of space. Obviously I'll put a link in the actual description so you can find those easily. Because you're going to have so many plugs for all the drives, you're going to need 2 of those. Next up is the 7-port hub. In plenty of my previous videos you would have seen that I use the Orico 7-port hubs. They're USB 3 hubs, and they also have a mains powered connection. These hubs are really good. I've never really had any issues with them at all, so these are the ones that I would recommend, and again you're going to need 2 of them. Also, you might need USB extension leads. I would recommend 2 of them at 2 meters. That will just basically give you a bit of extra room for maneuvering, and they'll just go between your PC and your hub, and it will just give you extra room to work with. So 2 USB extension leads would be useful for you. A few other things that you might require, and depending on what you've got at home and that kind of thing, obviously it'll make a difference whether you actually need to buy them or whether you have them in-house. So operating system, I prefer Windows. Windows 10 is perfectly good for mining, but there are other options as well. You could use free versions such as Ubuntu, but generally I think most people will probably be using Windows, so you need to pick up yourself a copy of Windows. On that basis, if you are picking up Windows, you can either install it using like an optical disk drive, so you might need that for your system as well. I've just got a USB one that I kind of just use as and when required. Otherwise you're going to need a optical drive for your miner also. And then of course keyboard and mouse for interfacing with it, perhaps a monitor to plug into it, but obviously you can always borrow one to get yourself set up. Okay, so let's take a look at the breakdown of our total build cost. So you can see the vast majority of the money is going into the Seagate drives. We require 13 of those and it comes to 3,205. On the CPU, motherboard and RAM, we're picking up a bill for $272, another $79 on the power supply, $240 on the graphics card. Like I say, that is a optional extra, but I would recommend it to get the best performance and return from your miner. And then extras and accessories, the small parts, the hubs, etc., they come in at $161. So to build our 104TB Burstcoin miner, that gives us a grand total of $3,957. Okay, so $3,950 would be quite a significant investment. So I'll just touch on a few topics that I think people will be asking, such as power usage, returns, and also a little bit about risk as well. So actually, I'll start off with risk. So if you invest this money into this hardware, you are obviously taking a risk. Lots of things can happen to the actual Burstcoin price. The network can continue to increase in difficulty, which means you're going to be getting less returns over time. One thing I will say with a hard drive miner versus say a GPU miner or a ASIC miner is that the hard drives generally tend to keep their value very well in the future. For the years that come ahead, you'll probably expect to see in the region of about a 25% loss on the cost of your hard drives year over year. So what you're going to be looking at is into the future, your hard drive is going to be depreciating at 25% per year, which is actually very good for electronic hardware. If you compare that to graphics cards, they're probably going to lose around about 50% a year. So the cost that is in this miner itself, the risks are slightly reduced versus ASIC mining or GPU mining. So moving on to the next part, which is the actual power consumption of this miner. So the USB 3 external hard drives, they use very little power each, but you have got quite a few of them. You'll be having 13 of them in this machine. Each of the drives will be using a peak of around about 10 watts. Most of the time they'll be idling, and on that basis they'll be using around about 5 watts each. The system itself with the actual graphics card, it will be using a peak of around about 200 watts. Again, most of the time it will idle roughly around about 100 to 150 watts, somewhere in that ballpark. So the actual miner is going to be really quite efficient overall. Most of the time it's going to be spent idling, not full load like a GPU miner or ASIC miner. So the actual power usage is quite low. In terms of return from this miner, it's very difficult for anyone to predict the future. The only details that I can share with you is based on my current results. So there's a couple of things to consider as we go into the future, and that is the Burstcoin price. That could either increase or it could also decrease, and that's obviously going to dramatically affect your earnings. It could either positively or negatively. So bear that in mind. Currently the Burstcoin price is basically as high as it's ever been. It's currently a very high price. One other factor is also the network difficulty. As the Burstcoin price increases, more miners come into the system, and that means proportionately everyone gets less Burstcoin for your mining efforts. So in terms of what you can earn in the future, at the moment for a rig like this, it's probably going to be, not including electricity, I'm just talking revenue, you'll probably be earning around about $500 per month back in Burstcoin. Obviously you need to take out your electricity costs out of that also. As we proceed further on a month by month basis, you can almost expect to get less money back over a month by month basis unless the actual network difficulty goes down or the Burstcoin price increases, and the block rewards are reducing month on month. So really you're going to be getting less Burstcoin from each month, but you potentially might be getting more in a monetary form each month. But no one can really predict the future. This is just kind of a ballpark figure, and like I say, in the region of about $500 is kind of what I would expect a miner like this to produce. So on that basis, the returns, I would expect a realistic return for anyone that built a machine like this. I know some people are really keen to get their money back within 6 months. I don't really think that's realistic. I think for a machine like this, you're probably looking really from 12 to 18 months, I think is a much more realistic time frame to get a return on a machine like this. Okay guys, so hopefully you've enjoyed watching this video. If you need links to any of the products or wish to discuss anything in more detail, check the actual description area. Like I say, I'll be checking the actual comments and following up with people if you have any specific questions also. So thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys on the next one.